Today on Inspired Money.
If more people became comfortable talking about money, more people would be very powerful in implementing good in our world. And so I can't separate my passion for personal finance from my work because I've seen so many times the fact that I've saved enough, I've been aggressive, I've lived simply, and that's allowed me to make really hard decisions and speak up and leave bad situations and go into good situations and launch a podcast because I'm like, I don't care if there's if someone might be upset about it. If they don't want me here, I don't want to be here. But I only had that because I had the power of that kind of walk away money in the bank.
This is episode 59 with professional fundraiser and host of the Philanthropy Podcast, Sean MacCready. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If it's your first time listening, welcome to Inspired Money. This show is different from other personal finance podcasts because we don't want to just learn how to live with money. We want to put money and inspiration together to prove that money can be used for great things. Let's get inspired to live a richer life, make a greater impact, and together, make the world a better place. I appreciate you joining me on this mission. If you listen week after week, you may recall that I was in Orlando for FinCon. That's a conference where 2,000 financial content creators gathered. It was mostly bloggers, but also included podcasters, YouTubers, and financial advisors. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have been a speaker for one of the sessions. I hope that it opens the doors to more speaking opportunities. If you're like me and find it a little intimidating to meet 2,000 people where you only know a few going in, try playing the ukulele or the ukulele. I played music at the live Stacking Benjamins show at the Orlando Improv. Imagine a personal finance show with comedy. That's basically the tone of the Stacking Benjamins podcast. Well, the ukulele proved to be a great icebreaker because about a dozen people at the conference came up to me to ask if it was me playing the ukulele. People were especially fond of Nirvana, Aerosmith, and Stone Temple Pilots. Those were songs that I played as guests were coming on or off the stage. I was basically in the role of Paul Schaefer on the Letterman show, except instead of playing the keyboards, I was playing the ukulele. Maybe I should bring the ukulele to every conference from now on. I learned a ton, made connections, and met great people. I even recorded 4 interviews, so that's coming soon. I also learned that a sign of a good conference is attendees losing their voices from so much talking and socializing late into the night. I'm sure that the smoke-filled karaoke bar didn't do anyone any favors either. Now let's get to today's show. Today's guest is Sean MacCready, and we recorded this interview on the last day of the Podcast Movement Conference in Philadelphia. You'll notice that Sean is losing his voice. He was popping lozenges to soothe his throat before hitting record. Clearly the sign of a good event. Inspired Money episode 54 featured Sean's wife, Molly, who founded a nonprofit to help street kids in Uganda. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, please check it out. Sean has also dedicated his life to the nonprofit world as a fundraiser and host of the Philanthropy Podcast. His career gives him unique insights on what money means as someone who works closely with donors, soliciting donations, talking to leaders of nonprofits, and seeing the significant difference that money can make to benefit great causes. In this episode, you'll learn tips for giving from a professional fundraiser, why the financial independence or FI movement is important for people, especially nonprofit employees, and the importance of saving and investing and why it gives you power. Now let's get inspired with Sean MacCready. Sean, welcome to Inspired Money. It's so great to sit down with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Andy. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
So I think if I was thinking back to the earliest true memory of money that I have, it's as a young kid, there was a magazine called Boys Life magazine, which had basically a feature where you could go out and sell things the way you would for school fundraisers or team fundraisers. And I was very motivated to get a little camping knife with a compass on it. That was the end goal. And I remember canvassing this entire rural Pennsylvania neighborhood of mine of 300 people to sell products when no one was in school. There were no team sales. All I was doing was going around pushing candies and wrapping paper and the like so that I could obtain this one item. I remember getting that item and thinking to myself, this isn't as good a quality as I thought it was going to be. I don't know if it was worth the work, but we had a lot of fun with it. I was a young boy with a camping knife and a compass, and that's pretty much all you need for adventure. But that was my first realization of the tie between work, money, and purchasing, I guess.
There are a lot of lessons in there.
I think there are.
A lot of layers.
Yeah.
You learned about quality. You learned about setting a goal. You learned about fundraising, even, it sounds like.
Learned a little bit about the fundraising side, yeah, and learned a little bit about disappointment sometimes when you realize just how much effort and labor you put in, and was it really worth it? Experience came rough to the young 8-year-old Sean MacCready.
So tell me a little bit about your personal path. You've been in fundraising and in the nonprofit space, different areas, but certainly there's been a lot of focus on fundraising. What brought you here?
That's a good question. I didn't know that the fundraising field existed 14 years ago. I grew up, as I think I mentioned there, in a very rural area of Pennsylvania. I came to the Midwest to go to college and spent some time in a university setting where I just wasn't on the radar of any fundraisers and didn't have any fundraising connection. And then eventually moved to Chicago to become a Catholic school teacher, doing a volunteer program out of Chicago. And so really didn't have any connection to fundraisers as there were none at our school until the school that I was placed at in the first year of that program was announced that it was closing about 3 months into my time there. So young, idealistic, I'm going to change the world, Sean. Slowly but surely discovered through this closure process that if you don't have the finances, the mission dries up really quickly. And our school community asked me to help take a look to see what we could do to save the school and how we could keep this community together. And as I went in and looked at our budget, I became acutely aware of the real world issues of money and aware of the need for fundraising and for effective fundraising. So that school, unfortunately, we weren't able to keep it open. I went to a new Catholic grade school that was a much more vibrant and thriving school, had about 500 students in Chicago. But when I asked to take a look at their budget, I also realized that budget wasn't that strong either, and that one person was responsible for all the fundraising, and that was the priest at the local parish. And eventually, through some conversations with him, he realized I was doing fundraising for my own classroom. I was trying to take the burden off of the school, and he invited me to become the fundraiser for the school as he transitioned to be an Army chaplain. And so he knew he was leaving and asked me to make all of his connections institutional connections. And that was 11 years ago. It started me on my path of fundraising, and I've now moved from that Catholic grade school where I built an office. I was a one-person shop and eventually grew it up to 3 people. I moved on to a Jesuit high school in Chicago where I was able to do fundraising at a little higher level with a great mentor who has been one of the most instrumental people in my life. And then had a chance to go work at my alma mater, so do fundraising at the University of Notre Dame for about 3 years and see just a shop that was through the roof in professionalism and an amazing, amazing institution. And then kind of bringing it full circle to an organization that I'm at now, Horizons for Youth, where I lead a fundraising team where we take kids from kindergarten and follow them all the way through college completion or entry into their career. And we do it for families from low-resource communities in Chicago. So it's been 11 years in fundraising, but I realized that 14 years ago, I didn't know the field existed.
It sounds like a great opportunity for development and growth and, learning this area. And certainly it's an important one. Would you say that you have a passion for what you do?
That's a great question. I absolutely have a passion for what I do, for the act itself and for the end of the act. So I've experienced the fact that fundraising is not thought highly of by a lot of people in the nonprofit world. It's kind of seen by many as the dirty side of the operation. It's the financial side. I even heard someone yesterday say it's the begging side of the organization. Whereas the program side is often thought of as this high side of goodness and action, which I think it is great goodness and action. Our program managers and people implementing our nonprofit programs are amazing. But I think the fundraising side is incredible too. I think that there are few things that you can do in life that are more enjoyable than taking great people who've managed their money well, sacrificed, worked hard. They've deferred their own joy and gratification for security and opportunity to help others. And these people are voluntarily giving something away when they have no technical obligation to do that. There's no requirement. And anything they did with that money, they could spend it on themselves, they could spend it on their friends, they could do whatever they'd like. But they're saying, I want to use this money to bring about a greater good in the world. And the thought of connecting those people with great organizations and great missions, I think is amazing. It's one of the most blessed jobs that I could ever do. I can't imagine not seeing that, even though on a daily basis, it's sometimes hard to see that, not going to lie. So I love that. And then I also love that idea of the end goal of being able to support these organizations that are doing amazing work.
Well, I imagine that when you're making those connections, it is a win-win. There is something to be gained by the person who is making a donation, as well as to the organization that's receiving it.
Absolutely. If it's not, we're really letting the profession down and we're letting the people we're working with down. I think there are some fundraisers who think about it as long as I hit my goals, as long as my organization gets what it needs, that's what really matters. And I think that's short-sighted. I think really the best people in the business understand that you're a partner in this journey, that you're a partner in helping someone discern the best place for their investment and the most meaningful place for them, and that aligns with a meaningful need of the mission of the nonprofits that we work with. And I think if you lose sight of that, you become, I don't want to give any other profession a bad name, but the stereotype of the bad used car salesman. And there's a lot of good used car salesmen. I love used car salesmen. I try to buy my cars used. But if you don't think about that partner in a real way, you become that stereotype of a bad fundraiser.
From the perspective of giving, because oftentimes with money, it can be a subject that is considered taboo. It's not always spoken about at home or among friends. And specifically with giving, that's kind of the same too. I mean, I think we often are influenced by our parents or people that we see, if we're lucky enough to have a role model, to be charitably minded and think about, should I earmark a portion of the money that I earn to give away? What are some of the things as a fundraiser that you can tell our listener? What are some of the considerations if they did not have a role model? What are some of the things that they should be thinking about when it comes to giving?
Yeah, you're really right. That taboo-ness around talking about money even extends to giving money away to a good cause. People still don't want to talk about that, which is really shameful. I think we've gone over a lot of the taboos of things we're not supposed to talk about. And yet both earning, investing, saving money is still there, and it's a shame. And also the act of giving it away. And that's true very much in the nonprofit community as well. We don't talk about money on both the income and earning and saving side, which is a shame because we probably should be talking about it more than anyone else because the salaries aren't necessarily always the greatest. But we also don't talk about the joy of giving money away. And that's a part of the reason why people think of that nonprofit fundraising side as the dirty side. So if I was thinking to people who are, listening to this show, it's the people who really think about money in a critical way and in a innovative way, or they're starting to do that. Maybe they got tied into your podcast, and I love what you're doing here, Andy, because of the fact that they want to think about it in a different way. And I think the first thing is open up those communication channels. There's a lot of growth that you could do in your charitable giving, the same way there's growth you could do in your earning and your saving and investing. I remember coming out, I had a period where I had a little extra income on the side because I was able to get free rent for a while. And I paid off all these student loan debt that I was just burdening me down. I couldn't wait to pay it off. And a couple of years later, I started Googling, is it better to pay down student loan debt or invest? And my interest rates, and this is like a magical loan that I had because I got interest rates on a variable rate loan, which could have been terrible. But because of the reduction in interest rates during the financial crisis, I had a negative interest rate loan. My interest rate was negative 0.17%.
You were making money for having the loan?
It was like a magical loan. I would pay off $40 and they would pay off $40.30 of this loan.
I love that.
And I paid this loan down faster than I should have because I didn't understand money. And it's almost, even to this day, it's like brings a tear to my eye. I killed the golden goose. But I think in the way you could grow in that, and I should have learned how to invest earlier. I should have asked myself those questions. And hindsight's 2020, no regrets. But I also should have learned how to be philanthropic earlier. Because if I would have talked to people, I would have made different decisions. I probably would have been more aggressive in my giving, quite frankly. I think that sometimes we have the end goal in mind of I'm going to earn a ton, I'm going to save a ton, I'm going to be wealthy, and then I'm going to give. And I've met a lot of wealthy people who haven't developed the strengths and the skills and the abilities to give charitably because they've lived in a world where they've never practiced that. Those muscles have atrophied. And I think they're missing something. They're not as happy as the people that I've met who maybe have more modest means, but have learned to live within those means, to have a healthy relationship with money, and to have a charitable mindset. And they've strengthened those muscles. So I think having those conversations with people, learning about that, investing a little bit of money in your charitable giving and seeing how different organizations act, doing research on things like the effectiveness of organizations and understanding how to get beyond the glossy materials, how to understand where in the world do I want to have an impact? What kind of impact will I have? Is this going to solve a problem or is this a compassionate giving? Is this maybe, and some people differentiate that between philanthropy and charity. Understanding all those types of things and having those conversations, it doesn't come instantly or organically, and it's not a perk, it's not a membership club benefit of wealth. You've got to grow in it. And so I think that'd be my advice to people. If you're trying to grow in that way, understand that you've got to strengthen those muscles.
How can one educate themselves? I don't think that there's an instruction manual that you get if you make a certain dollar amount. No one comes to you and says, welcome to the club. Here's a manual on how you can research an organization and understand organizationally how it works and where your donation or how it's going to be used, all those things. Those are all things that, I don't know, is it just self-discovery and you have to figure it out on your own, or are there specific people that you can talk to, or at least educate yourself in like a shorter period of time so that you're not spending your time just thinking about it and that you could actually act and do something?
Yeah, because you don't want paralysis by analysis to set in there. And you're never going to have all the facts. And my university philosophy professor is going to probably be shocked by this, because I think my papers were probably some of the worst that he ever read when he started doing when I took my intro courses. But I think you really do have to start with that self-examination and that reflection upon what is it that it's important to me, and is it giving to causes that have touched my life, which is what a lot of people do. We think I benefited from X, therefore other people would benefit from X, and let me support organization Y. Or is the thing that is motivating you alleviating the greatest needs in our world? And those are both valid questions to be asking yourself, because you need to make your giving something that you could sustain in life. I don't want this to be a one-shot thing, and then you say, well, that didn't do anything for me, and I'm done. I'm going to keep it in my back pocket, and I'm going to buy that fourth boat, or I'm going to, I'm not going to prioritize cooking my own lunches because I don't really care about giving. So I think you have to start with that. What's important to me? What matters to me? There are some resources out there that'll be helpful. There's things like Charity Navigator. There's things like GuideStar. They kind of rate nonprofits, but they're still new. It's early in the life of cycle of some of these organizations, and they're still determining how to best do this. For a while, there was this big bar of an organization could spend no more than 20% on overhead. And if you spend more than 20% on overhead, you're a bad organization. And then all of a sudden, all the organizations that were exceptions to that rule pointed it out. And these groups like GuideStar and Charity Navigator had to say to themselves, like, we need to update our algorithms. But in some ways, the damage was already done to those organizations. So take the tools that are out there, examine them critically. If your interest is in what is the greatest impact, there's organizations around effective altruism. There's a group, GiveWell, that has a lot of material on that. And that's an important concern too. And then you also have to think about how you want your giving to affect you within your community, because there might be local organizations that aren't the greatest impact when you consider all the organizations worldwide, but they help you find your place within your community.
Coming up, Sean explains why he launched his podcast, travel hacking, financial independence, and more. But first, there are no shortcuts for giving well.
There's a lot of great articles out there. There needs to be more. I'm trying to tackle a few of those. I have my podcast, which is the Philanthropy Podcast, which helps mostly nonprofit fundraisers kind of know the best tools and best practices in their field. But we're also bringing in a few people to talk about how do you do charitable giving. So we're trying to get that out there, but really just got to do research. It's the same way of, when you're earning money, nobody comes out with a guide that says, bam, here's how to make it work and make it grow. And there are guides, but they're put out by people who have their own objectives, and you got to screen through them and you got to filter through them. If you want to give well, you got to do the work.
The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/059. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to look up more about Sean or things mentioned in this episode. We're also adding transcripts as we can do them, so check the website for updates. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. This week I want to talk about travel hacking. There's a comprehensive article at zerototravel.com, and I'll include a link in the show notes. But here are the highlights. 1. Sign up to join all rewards and frequent flyer programs. You never want to take a flight or stay in a hotel without earning some type of points or miles. You should also check the hotel or airline's website before you book to see if they're running any promotions that can earn you bonus miles or points. And 2, be a repeat customer. Take advantage of loyalty programs. You don't need to sign up for all of these at once. You can sign up as needed, depending on which hotel you're staying at, or if you're flying different airlines. Now, here's how you gain significant miles and points. If you want to earn points really quickly, the only way to earn tens of thousands of miles for free flights without having to sit on the plane for that long is to sign up for credit cards that offer bonus miles or points. But before you do this, make sure that you pay your credit card bill in full every month so that you do not carry any credit card debt. And 2, you have to have the ability to meet the minimum spend requirements to earn the points. You see, when you sign up for a travel rewards credit card, often you have to meet minimum spend requirements. So for example, there's a reward credit card called the Chase Sapphire Preferred Card. This card requires you to charge $3,000 in the first 3 months. Travel hacking with reward credit cards can get complicated because of the volume of choices. And you do need to stay organized, keeping track of the rules, the minimum spend requirements, and paying balances when they're due. But by signing up for multiple credit cards, spending and transferring points, you can rack up hundreds of thousands of miles and save big on flights, consumer goods, hotel, and even sports tickets. In the zerototravel.com article that I referenced, there are a couple of tools to help you track this information. There's a website and app called Award Wallet where you can track all the needed information. And the article also includes a link to a basic Excel spreadsheet that helps you track the sign-up date, minimum spends, and a few other important items if that's your preference. So good luck, let me know how you make out, and happy traveling. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. What's your biggest financial challenge right now? Do you need a financial plan or help consolidating old 401k and other accounts? We can help you get financially organized and set up for the future. Email me at awang@runnymede.com. That's runnymede.com. Or if it's easier, go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. That's ANDY. I'd love to hear from you, and we can even set up a short call since it can be easier to talk money. I'd love to hear from you. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong.
Tell me a little bit about the Philanthropy Podcast. Have you hit your 1-year anniversary?
A little over a year now, about 15 months. Yeah, it's a passion project. I really love this fundraising space. I love the work I do in the nonprofit side of things. I think that when people realize just how powerful their relationship with money can be, they can accomplish amazing things. And in the nonprofit side of things, I lived in a very rural area, and I understood that my career trajectory has really benefited from some amazing people that I've met and been able to network with. That's difficult for people if you're not living in a place where all those other folks are. And so I started the podcast as a way to provide resources to leaders and aspiring leaders in fundraising to grow in their professional development, even if they didn't have access to conferences and professional development materials and mentors, to kind of give a resource that can be taken in by the podcast route. And then also, there's a few people that I've worked with. I've just worked with some really brilliant donors. And so I'm trying to engage them and have some conversations with them about how they plan their philanthropy and kind of grow that side of the effort as well.
That's cool because you can really have a multiplier effect. You're taking things that you've known or learned and really sharing that.
Yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I hope to God somebody's learning from all my mistakes. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's just my way of paying back all the people that I've messed up something with and saying, here's my mistakes, and I'll bring on a few guests who are way smarter than me to talk about what they've learned and what they know. But yeah, no, I enjoy it. It's a great way to get to know the other people who are passionate about the field as well.
That's great. On your podcast, I heard you talk about attending an airline points conference.
Yeah.
I never heard of that before.
Not many people have. I got into the credit card and miles world pretty hardcore.
So is this a travel hacking event? Is that what it is?
Yep. Bunch of travel hackers and some of the nerdy people that you could ever meet. And they're awesome. They're amazing. But my wife and I love to travel. And we need to do it on a nonprofit budget because both my wife and I work in nonprofits. And so I realized the value of learning how to kind of hack a system, learning how to understand how a system works. And so I've used that and used the knowledge that you can gain there to fund our travel lifestyle. So it's been great, but I think it's another form of currency. It's not an investment. It's a currency that can only go down in value, but it's a form of currency that if you figure it out, you're going to be able to achieve some of your goals a little quicker. And so I kind of have an obsession with personal finance and fundraising and charity, but also in the travel hacking world.
Yeah, it sounds like you're passionate not only about fundraising, but about financial independence. I know you do a lot of reading Reddit groups, and how does that connect to what you're doing during the day? Is there a connection?
Oh, it's absolutely instrumental. I think it's a risk factor for our nonprofits that our nonprofit employees have in many times insecure financial situations. Because if you are in an insecure financial situation, it's more difficult to manifest the power to speak truth to power when it needs to happen. And so that can mean anything from speaking up about the type of services we're offering and what's best for the people we're trying to serve, to also speaking up just about how you're going to do something in your office. And I think that what I've realized is money is no more than a human-made conduit for our time that we put into working, the effort of our work, the ability that we have, the knowledge that we have. In some ways, it's a conduit for the ability we have to defer satisfaction, to push it into the future through investing. And it's not perfect because it also relies on the outside valuations, other people's valuations of our work. I think a lot of nonprofit employees are probably underpaid compared to the good they do, but that's tied to humans are imperfect, therefore money is imperfect. But I think that the more we realize that that's what money is, the more we realize that it's not just the people we think of who are wealthy who have power with their money. Every decision we make, every purchasing decision we make, every investment decision, every savings decision is a decision we make with all of our little employees. You know, I have a sore throat, so I bought a little Starbucks thing this morning to help me talk through the interview. And that was me putting my little employees to work saying, hey, I need you to help assuage my throat here.
I like how you have like medicinal Starbucks.
It's the only, I'm not a coffee drinker. So it's really the only time I hit it up.
Did you have to get a prescription for that?
You know what? I said to the lady, give me your strongest thing that helps her a sore throat. She named like 8 products and then said it'll help. And I said, that's what I needed to know. But anyway, I just think the idea that once we realize that money is not an inherently good or bad thing. Money is it's a manifestation of our decisions and our power. Then we realize that we have more power than anybody thought. And that goes for just the power of your decisions of putting your paycheck to work and also the power of your savings and investments. And that the more you learn about that and the more if you can, and I think everyone can to various degrees, build wealth in your life, you can have more power. And I think that that's not talked about in a lot of the spaces that I work in the nonprofit space. And it makes people feel really insecure and they don't want to talk about it. And they feel like it's a stressor in their life. But the moment you become secure and literate in that, you all of a sudden become empowered. And you become empowered to make the decisions that you think are best in life and to bring people together through your charitable giving rather than divide people by building separation or isolating yourself. And I think that if people are scared of the power of money, it's because they don't realize how powerful they are. And if once you realize that, if money just becomes an extension of your goals and your ambitions and your goodwill. And I think that if more people became comfortable talking about money, more people would be very powerful in implementing good in our world. And so I can't separate my passion for personal finance from my work because I've seen so many times the fact that I've saved enough, I've been aggressive, I've lived simply, and that's allowed me to make really hard decisions and speak up and leave bad situations and go into good situations and launch a podcast because I'm like, I don't care if there's if someone might be upset about it. Like, if they don't want me here, I don't want to be here. But I only had that because I had the power of that kind of walk away money in the bank. Yeah, I wish more people would become comfortable with that because I think more people, when they realized that, would put their power to use for really good things.
I love that. I love your philosophy. And what I'm hearing is that there's power in money, but even greater than that, the power comes through having control over your finances. And that comes in the form of knowledge and learning certain skills. Because it sounds like what you're saying is that it doesn't, don't look first at the amount that you're making. No, that's not absolutely the key. You're saying no matter how much you make, whether it is a lot or whether it's a little bit, there are things that you can learn and implement. So even if you have a small salary just starting out, if you are knowing how to spend and save within your means with that salary, you will gain power because you can still save and then you can still use that in ways that you want, or you can bank it and have some sort of security so that you have flexibility to make choices.
Yeah, that's what I love about the financial independence community, because it's not about the wealth you build. It's not about the total dollar figure in the bank account. It's about the funds you have in relation to what you need. And 50% of the equation is reducing what you need. My wife and I are double income, no kids. We're the dinks of the world. And we live in a 650 square foot garden apartment, because what's important to us isn't space to put stuff. It's relationships. So we want to get out of the apartment and go do things. It's travel and it's security. And if people have a low income in the financial independence community, people say you just need to learn to live off of less of that income. Now it's hard. There's a certain baseline that we all need, and it makes it more challenging the lower your income is. I'm not going to deny that. But it's about your relation. It's not about the total dollar figures. It's about the power comes from the person. The power doesn't come from the money. And the freedom and independence comes from your ability to live simply compared to your ability to need to spend money. And a lot of people spend a lot of money living simply, but I'm talking about real living simply. So, so that's why I love that community. I think it's a good community for almost anyone to get involved with, because it does help them understand wants versus needs, and wants versus needs versus security, which I think are the three sides of the financial equation people need to think about.
Sean, how do you define success?
There's probably a lot of people who've defined it a lot better than me. Probably a lot of smarter people than me out there. But I believe the end goal of our world. I think that we're all in this together, whether we like it or not. A lot of people think we're not in it together, but I think they're wrong. You might try to be being separate, but it's going to come back to get you. So I think success for me is movement towards helping people become more connected and realize that we're in this together. And for me, the more I could do that with my life, the more I think I've accomplished what I hope to be successful in. And I've just seen amazing people all over the world. I was in high school. I did a study abroad program where there was like zero supervision. My friends and I made stupid decisions and like sat under the Eiffel Tower because we thought we were going to stay out in clubs all night long. We were 16 years old in Paris. And it was freezing cold. We had no place to stay. We were underdressed. And eventually a group of homeless and French invited us over to their burning barrel because they looked at us on the bench and thought, these people look miserable. And I was like, I was floored by the fact, and they offered us a smoke and everything. And I'm like, these people are homeless. I'm studying abroad as a 16-year-old, and they are offering their kindness to me. And that's when I realized people are amazing beyond all belief. And I'm from rural Pennsylvania. There's not many homeless where we live. And it just blew my mind. And every step of the way, I've realized how incredible people are. So success for me is when people realize how good others are and bring it together. And it's not an end goal. Like I set goals and I sometimes reach them, and I consider that success. But even if I don't fully achieve that goal and inch closer to it, I think that is a success. So yeah, there's probably way better definitions than that. That's the way I think of it in my life.
It's an amazing story because it's a human to human connection, and it had little to do with money. There was no money involved in that story.
No, none at all. They didn't ask for money. They literally were just like, these people are cold. We want to share our warmth.
Right. Come on over.
Yeah, exactly. And if we could all share our warmth a little more, I think we'd be in a better place.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thanks for sharing your professional path with us, some of your personal thoughts on finance and how one can look at their finances and try to take control and gain more power. I think those are all great things. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener where they can find more about you, follow you, listen to your podcast? And you actually have more than one podcast, so maybe you should include that too.
I do. One of my other passions in the travel world is scuba diving, which was a childhood dream of mine that's been fulfilled in some ways, and unfortunately is just scratch an itch. It is not a very good, simple living and frugal itch. I'm still trying to figure out how to make scuba diving inexpensive. But in the meantime, I'm just going to enjoy some things in life. We all have to have our splurges. So I have a second podcast called Two Shallow Divers. That's the number 2 Shallow Divers. You can find that anywhere you're looking for podcasts. You can find the Philanthropy Podcast there as well. You can also visit thephilanthropypodcast.com, and that's going to take you to a website where you can subscribe on iTunes or Android. And as far as finding me, I'm probably most active on Twitter, where I'm just at the username Philanthropy Pod. That's PhilantHropyPod. Or if you look me up on LinkedIn, it's just Sean MacCready, and that's SeanMaccready. I'm the only one on LinkedIn. So if you find me on LinkedIn, look me up, send me a message to let me know where you heard of it. And, if people want to connect, those are the 2 platforms I actually check on a regular basis. So, yeah, I look forward to hearing from it. I think your listeners have to be fascinating people. I love the premise. I love what you're doing. And I think that I hope you get some good interactions with them, because I can't imagine not coming across some amazing folks who tune into this, Andy.
They are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? Did you have one? I like that Sean mentioned that you can build wealth and have more power. It's not about hitting a dollar number in your bank account. It's a process where if you become secure and financially literate, you become empowered. You can potentially do great things for yourself, your family, and for those in need. And Sean said something like this: the more you get comfortable talking about money, you can become very powerful implementing good in our world. And isn't that what it's all about? Using your money to do something really awesome and making a big impact. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment and takeaway, let me know by going to inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. I'd love to see you in the community and continue the conversation there. All the music on today's show is by Jim Kimo West. Aloha, Kimo. If you enjoy this show, please tell a friend. It helps more people to find the Inspired Money podcast and helps us grow our community. Together, let's make the world a better place. Thank you for tuning in. Have an inspired week, and do something that scares you, because the magic happens outside of your comfort zone.